Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the Depth of Film podcast. I'm Elizabeth. I'm a film major who loves to geek out about movies.
And I'm Emily. I'm an English major, and I really like to pick apart movies and analyze the themes, what role the setting plays, and things like symbol.
And sadly, Laura is not here today with us because she was tired. And not because she fell asleep during the movie, even though she almost did, but because she had a long day. So we're going to give her a break today, but hopefully she'll be back for the next episode. So, today we are discussing Murder on the Orient Express.
Yes. Based on the Agatha Christie novel, which Elizabeth has listened to on an audiobook. I have not read the book. But yeah, we'll have a little bit of a mixed perspective on having watched the movie together and then Elizabeth having also had exposure to the book.
And just to clarify, we are reviewing the 2017 version of Murder on the Orient Express, not any of the older versions.
Yes.
This is the movie directed by Kenneth Branagh, who also stars as Hercule Poirot. It's going to be hard to pronounce that name for the entire.
Yeah.
Hercule.
I never took French. Is it Poirot or?
I think it's Poirot.
Poirot. Okay.
So forgive our French.
Yeah.
All right. So this movie starts out with Poirot in Israel.
Istanbul.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And me being the film major, it starts out at like this really weird overhead shot. I don't know if you noticed this, but they use this trick a lot throughout the movie. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of it. But we could talk more about that later. But anyway, okay. And Poirot is trying to enjoy eggs.
Yes.
But they're not good enough because they're not the right. He wants 2 eggs of the same size. Mm-hmm. Which to me, it was like, why don't you just eat 1 egg? Then you don't have to worry about this.
Right. It's a very good introduction of like his neuroticism of wanting everything to be perfect and everything needing to be balanced down to the eggs that he starts his day with. So, yeah. Which
is something that, like, granted, I've only read Murder on the Orient Express. It's the only Agatha Christie novel I've read. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't the vibe I got from him in the book. Like, he was very particular, but he wasn't, like... He was reminding me, are you familiar with the show Monk?
Yes.
Yeah. He was giving me Monk vibes.
Okay, so a little bit OCD.
Yeah. Obsessive compulsive.
Yeah.
Like, couldn't do his job if, like, both feet weren't stuck in the manure. Like,
right. Well, he did say at the beginning something like, wanting everything to be perfect all the time. He said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, but, like, I see the world as it should be, and normally this makes life very difficult to live. Like, it's very difficult in all spheres of life, except it really comes in handy in solving crimes, or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
I wrote down the quote. He said, "There is right and there is wrong. There is nothing in between."
Yeah.
And that seems to be an ongoing theme in this movie, that Poirot, like, isn't willing to accept a gray area or, like, an imperfection in anything.
Right.
Even when it comes down to revealing who did the murder to the police.
Yeah.
At the end. This is a spoiler review.
Yes. Oh yeah, we'll be throwing in major spoilers, so if you have not read the book or seen the movie, just stop listening now.
Yeah, this isn't one you want to spoil. This is like the classic murder mystery.
Yeah.
And it's a surprise ending, so it's very unique, I think, for a murder mystery.
Yeah. So yeah, we have Poirot solving this first case with kind of a religious relic that has been stolen, and that's just the opener for the movie of him presenting the conclusion of this case. And then upon closing that case, he gets on a boat, which takes him, I don't know, I don't remember exactly where, but it takes him to the area where he'll soon be boarding the train.
Wherever it is, they have good bread.
True, yes. Yeah, he is a little obsessed with the bread. But he doesn't plan to go on the train, which is interesting. It's kind of a little, like, twist of fate there, that the world's best detective just happens to need to get on this train.
I think because he's going to England for another case. Mm-hmm. Though, fast forward, I know we said we were going to go over the plot in order, but to the end, where they totally just derail him once he finally gets to the station, and now he's going to Egypt without even, like, going
where he was intending to go in the first place. Yeah,
that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't remember where I was going with this. That was just it.
I just think it's funny that you said derail.
I try.
Yeah, so he ends up getting on the train because he knows Book, who is this friend who really has no scruples in life. He's kind of like the careless bad boy type of character, I guess. Like, I don't know.
He's kind of had everything in life handed to him, so he's kind of living the high life.
But ironically, he's the only person who is not
a suspect.
A suspect in this crime, which is interesting, I guess. Yeah.
Though I did kind of wonder. They said because he didn't sleep in the compartment, but like aren't all of, or maybe compartment's the wrong word. The carriage.
Right. He didn't sleep in that train car where all the rest of them did.
But like, aren't they all connected? Like, don't they all walk in between them? Or can you only switch when they're stopped?
Know. I'm not quite sure how that worked. I think it was more of like a plot device where like they needed an assistant who was definitely not morally culpable at all for Poirot. So they were like, we need to just give this guy an out somehow. I don't know.
Plus, where do you think his bed is? You think he's like sleeping in the kitchen or something?
Yeah.
Also, like, what about all the chefs and everything on the train?
That's true. The kitchen staff were like never questioned on anything. They were just there in the background, like, you want more eggs or?
Like, even when the valet's like, oh yeah, like anybody could have put something in the drink.
Right.
You know, I just picked it up from the kitchens at like 9 o'clock, like I ordered it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't even go in question.
These static characters in the background. But,
thinking of static characters in the background, in the book, I do not remember there being an excavation crew. That is like, and if like they're trying to dig them out, how did they get so close to the train? Like, shouldn't they be on the other side of the snowdrift trying to dig them out?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure because I know that there was kind of like an avalanche of snow that buried the train right before it got to the tunnel. And this is actually something that I wanted to talk about. I found it interesting that the train stops on a bridge because it's a very precarious place for it to stop. Also, just like the device of an avalanche. When I think of an avalanche, it's like kind of like all of this pressure building up and then like crumbling in upon itself, which was kind of like the nature of the crime that was committed.
Ooh, I like that.
So, I don't know, that kind of seemed like really fitting for what like caused them to get stuck. An avalanche, just like, yeah.
Okay, that makes me like it more. Because, I mean, maybe I just missed that in the book, but I feel like in the book they were just like, oh, it snowed hard, and there's like snow on the tracks so they can't go. Like, it just
was
like...
definitely an avalanche in the movie, because I remember like seeing the snow coming down the mountain, but I don't know.
But it also doesn't really make sense to me, like, okay, so you're saying it just like snowed like 2 feet in an hour or something, and that like stopped the train. That didn't make sense to me.
Huh.
So I guess I'm okay with the movie's adjustment there.
License.
But my other thought is like, okay, the whole point of the story is that they're stuck on this train because of the snow. Mm-hmm. But if these people came to excavate them that quickly, surely they had transportation to the train. Right. So therefore, why are the passengers stuck on the train? If they couldn't just ferry them back and forth with another way. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
I understand it's a plot device,
wouldn't
but
have come like by foot. You're saying like they would have.
Like I think they show them heading out by foot, but if they could just walk there that easily, because like how long are they stuck? A couple hours before the excavation crew comes?
Maybe it was because of the concept of their luggage, like that all of their luggage was on the train, and it would have been a lot to carry in the snow. Like, and maybe they had valuables. Like some of them seem pretty wealthy.
Plus,
so,
they
like,
probably weren't like prepared to go out in a blizzard.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they went on foot, and that was the idea of it.
Maybe,
but yeah, I'm not sure. But anyway, so okay, I don't know. Are there any other plot points that we need to? Should we just talk about the ending right now and then?
So
go from there?
On this train, Book makes a point of saying how a train is an interesting setting.
Yes.
Because it's a bunch of people who are kind of stuck in close proximity, who don't know each other, strangers, from all walks of life.
Yeah.
And all different places and backgrounds.
Yep.
Which is ironic because they aren't.
Yeah. The exact quote that he says is, "You know, there's something about a tangle of strangers pressed together for days on end with nothing in common, but the need to go from one place to another, then never see each other again. Boredom plus anonymity plus a constant gentle rocking." That stood out to me too, because it is so ironic that it's revealed that not only are they not strangers, but they're all tied to a common tragedy and a common motive. So there's nothing really random about all of the people that are on this train. Except for maybe the detective being there. I don't know.
Yeah, in the book they talk about how Michel, I think his name is, who was the conductor. Basically, like, he arranged it so that everyone, since he worked on the train, they picked a time of year when, like, nobody's traveling on the Orient Express.
Right.
So they basically tried to book the entire carriage so that they would be the only ones there.
That's why there was so much emphasis at the beginning about the train being full.
Yes.
Yeah.
For that reason. But then because Poirot knew Book got him on anyway, which kind of threw a wrench into the works for their plan.
Right. Yeah.
So obviously, one of the passengers is Ratchet, who they find out later is Cassidy.
Yeah.
You have to say it with that Poirot accent.
Cassetti.
Who murdered
Daisy
Armstrong, who was this young, like, beloved child of this household.
Yeah. The father was a colonel or general?
I think he was a colonel.
Colonel in the military, and the mother was
the daughter of a famous actress.
Daughter of an actress. Okay. And yeah, Cassetti. It's not revealed his true identity until later, but he's going under the name Ratchet, and he's played by Johnny Depp, who doesn't. I mean, we don't actually see that much of him, like, in terms of the whole film. He's really just there at the beginning before he's murdered.
And he tries to hire Poirot to be, like, his bodyguard, basically, and Poirot turns him down.
Yeah. Yep.
And then he is murdered.
Yeah.
Which is the whole plot. Trying to figure out who murdered Ratchet.
Right. Yeah. And Ratchet was getting these anonymous notes beforehand, like out of newspaper clippings, so no handwriting, threatening him. And the notes were interesting because one of them just said, like, watch yourself or something vague like that. But another one was like, I noticed it had the pronoun us. Like, you won't, you won't pull one over on us, or something like that. Like a group reference, which was interesting. Yeah, so...
All right, question for you.
Yeah.
Did you think it was odd that Ratchet didn't recognize any of them?
I don't know. I mean, he seemed like the type of person who lived his life very recklessly, and I mean, I think he was fully aware that he knew, or that he had made a lot of enemies, but I don't know if he...
Like he had so many they blurred together.
Yeah,
type
if he
thing?
ever knew, like, what their faces even looked like. Like, if he just knew from the notes and everything that some of them were probably, like, in his midst. But it takes a certain type of detachment to, like, kill a small child like that. So, I don't know. I don't know that he ever maybe, like, committed to memory, oh, this is what her family looked like, or this was, I don't know.
It's kind of, like, dark to think about the fact that he could have such a dramatic effect on all of those people's lives and just, like,
and not even know them. Yeah.
Not even
Yeah.
be able to recognize them.
Yeah.
Which I think says a lot about his character, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas those people can't forget him, which is kind of the whole plot.
Yeah. And also, like, there's something to be said with the fact that, like, he got off without being held accountable, I guess, for that crime, because there was a mix-up where a maid was convicted instead of him, and she was actually innocent. And so he kind of got away with it. I don't think there was any reference to him going to jail or anything. So he's just living his life, like making money in the corrupt ways that he always has, and not being punished at all for this murder. So, yeah, that could definitely drive people to think that they want justice to be served, I guess. Yeah. But that was actually one of my kind of thematic questions that I wanted to pose, is the concept of justice and what is true justice. So at the end, it's revealed there are a lot of moving parts within this plot, and Poirot is individually interviewing all of the passengers on the train, trying to figure out who might have done it. And there's a lot of clues that seem to be coming together, but he can't quite figure out how. And eventually he traces everyone back to having some kind of connection to the tragedy of this child, Daisy, being killed. So some of the characters were like a maid in the household, or the Duchess, or the cook, or some of them were even more remotely connected, like the son of the lawyer who was trying to convict Ratchet, or Cassetti, and how he was affected and the implications that it had on his life. And so there was this branching trickle effect to about 12 lives that were all wounded by Daisy being killed. And so in the end, we find out that it wasn't one single passenger that was capable of killing Ratchet. It was actually a joint effort by all of them. So each of them took a turn at inflicting a stab wound. And the whole thing was kind of orchestrated by Daisy's grandmother, who was also a passenger on the train. So this is like a really unique conclusion, I think, for a mystery, because usually there's like one person who's responsible, or maybe a pair. But the fact that it was a collective effort, it's almost like hard to pin down who the true killer is, because it's like they were all randomly stabbing at this man, and like who's to say which like dagger wound actually killed him. But in a sense, they're all guilty because they all worked toward killing him, and it was premeditated. So like you were saying at the beginning, like there is this area of gray. Another aspect of the gray is that they have all been affected by the injustice that is the death of Daisy. So when we talk about what is justice, I think it's interesting to look at like kind of the present day film perspective on justice, because I've seen this in like a lot of movies where there's almost like a recurring condoning of killing. Like once the person who is killed has inflicted X amount of pain on the victims, it's almost okay or something for them to kill in return, which I really don't agree with. Like that really rubs me the wrong way, because in my mind it's like two wrongs don't make a right, and by becoming like the killer, there's no peace in that. Like I kind of had a problem with, I don't know, did you have thoughts on that?
I think it's definitely a gray area, because you could also argue that if Ratchet had had his fair day in court, that he might have gotten capital punishment for that. Like he might have been sentenced to death. So on the one hand, it's kind of like they're just doing what the justice system failed to do. But on the other hand, I feel like, what are they getting out of his death?
Right.
Like, the only real reason to do it is revenge. Like, okay, he got off. He's not bothering you people anymore. Like, you're obviously all connected in this way. Like, why don't you use it to heal rather than using it to plot revenge? So,
Yeah.
and I think that's why Poirot struggles with it too, because it's a gray area, and he, in particular, is there's right and there's wrong, and there's no in between.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there are definitely like moral implications to this film to be considered, and possibly some plot holes with how it was wrapped up. Like the fact that, okay, Poirot decides to let them all off clean and not report any of them to the police, even though he knows that all 12 of them worked toward killing Ratchet. I think it's like a little unlikely that no one would have felt guilty afterwards for what they did, or no one would have had any like I don't know, like any little inkling in their conscience being like, was this the right thing to do? And is it right that none of us got caught? And like that wouldn't go on to affect them in their personal lives later on. Like stabbing a person is kind of a traumatic experience, I would assume. Like,
Yeah.
So the fact that they can all just go on and happily live their lives now, I thought that was kind of like unrealistic.
Especially since they're like not willing to take responsibility for their actions. Like maybe it would be different if they all got off the train the train and said, you know, yeah, we killed him, this is how, prosecute us, you know.
Yeah.
But
And some of them were willing to do that. Like the grandmother was willing to turn herself in, and the doctor was willing, for the sake
only
of...
after he figured it out.
Yeah. Which was kind of for the sake of the woman that he was in love with. What was her name? The
Mary.
Duchess. Mary. Yeah.
I do think it's interesting. In the movie, they got rid of one character. They kind of merged two into one. So, but in the book, there was 13 characters and 12 stab wounds, because the sister, the Countess, was going, was in on it, but then decided at the last minute that she couldn't do it, and the husband stabbed for her. was how it happened in the book. So she was the only one who was innocent, even though she was arguably the most connected to the murder, being the sister of the mother.
Right. I like that.
Which was
That's
interesting.
Yeah. Huh.
I feel like we have to talk about these characters.
Yeah.
Because they're a motley bunch.
They're a motley bunch.
And we were getting a little too serious, so we have... Okay, so here is a fun question for you. What are your thoughts on the mustache?
My thoughts on the mustache? Well, I really like the little mustache holder thing that he has when he sleeps to keep his mustache intact. I thought that was very funny. I don't know. I think it's a good look to set him apart. It definitely gives off like that dignified air to it. Yeah.
Okay, see, I had the opposite reaction to the mustache. I thought it was ridiculous looking. And granted, I don't know much about mustaches, but like I know he's supposed to have a very large, luxurious mustache, but it just looked like large and hairy. Plus they like, I kind of dived into the bonus features on this, and they talked about how Poirot would want like a mustache. Like they talked about how in other adaptations they go with like the little tiny mustache, but how like in the books it's described as like large and luxuriant type thing. So they decided to go with, I don't know if you noticed it, but it's like a double mustache. Like it goes up and curls, and then underneath there's like another one that comes up and curls.
Wow.
And it just, to me, it makes it look like messy. If you don't know that that's what they were going for. Plus the fact that like it doesn't quite match his hair color. And I don't know how facial hair works. I know that sometimes it's different.
Sometimes. Like, you can have, like, a red beard and not have red hair. I'm not quite sure how that works, but I've seen it.
It bugs me, though. And the fact that, like, his mustache was, like, gray, almost white, and, like, his hair was, like, basically dark, it was bugging me.
That really rubbed you the wrong way. That was the thing about this movie that didn't sit well.
I just like couldn't take him seriously with the mustache.
Oh, man.
And then, it also bugged me that at the end, like I understand why they did it from a cinematic perspective. Like at the end, he's struggling with the whole, do I like let them all go free, or do I, convict them? And they go for like this weird like messy cowlick look, and like
with his hair, or
like his hair is kind of like all messed up, like windblown, like make him look like. And then like, he's got like the collar up and like the whole like,
yeah, I know what you're talking
almost
about.
like superhero vibe, like Poirot. The whole thing with him is that he's a perfectionist, and you're telling me he's going up with like collar up, hair windblown. Like I understand that like he is like conflicted right now, so he's a little like off his game, which I think is what they're trying to convey. They also go for like a tilted camera angle to convey that. But to me, I was like, okay, but even conflicted Poirot would still have perfect hair. The man spends an hour before he goes to sleep, like, treating his mustache. He's not going to let his hair get out of line because he's a little ruffled.
Yeah.
You know? You'd think he'd almost, like, be more of a perfectionist if he was ruffled about this.
Maybe. I mean, maybe they were trying to show, like, a little bit of, like, decomposition of his perfectionism over time, because by the end of it, he makes a decision that isn't in alignment with his prior principle of right is right, wrong is wrong, there's no in between. He makes a decision that's based on, well, he says, like, following his heart, and it's entirely based on morally gray material that he's wrestling with. So I think that was like a change in him, I guess. Like, I don't know. I mean, we could talk about whether or not we agree with this decision.
Yeah, the quotes he says, perhaps now I am asked to listen to my heart. Mm-hmm. And then he says, I must learn to live with the imbalance.
Right.
Which I could live with. Like, okay, he's changing at the end of the movie because of the events that occur. Mm-hmm. But then at the very end, the tie. He asks the messenger to adjust his tie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that just threw that out the window. So, now he's back to the perfectionism.
Yeah. Huh.
So that bugged me a little bit.
That's fair. That's fair. Also, I feel like maybe it's saying,
I feel like it would have been better sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Better thematically if you, like, saw him notice the tie being crooked and just not say anything.
Didn't comment.
I feel like that would have been better. I understand that they're trying to set up more movies with Poirot and you can't have him, like, arc that quickly. Mm-hmm. But I think that would have been better.
Yeah. I don't know. I think maybe it was supposed to be, like, a gradual change in his character, or like a slight questioning of is this perfectionism the end all be all in every circumstance, or are there some circumstances where it doesn't serve me as well as I thought it would? And then, like, at the end, even though he does have to question it, they bring it back around to, like, okay, yes, like there are circumstances where you have to be open to thinking about things differently, but it's the same old Poirot who is also, like, on point with solving crimes, and he's going to be solving more. So, like, maintaining his character, but also giving, like, wiggle room for growth of a sort.
I mean, I guess to contradict myself, you know, you could also argue that I guess it's more realistic that he would fall back on being a perfectionist right away. Like, he wouldn't learn that lesson all at once.
Yeah.
But it still bugged me.
Yeah. All right. What else do we have? Did you have anything else cinematic or, like, camera angles based or lighting that stood out to you?
Okay, can we talk about the overhead shots?
Yeah.
So they do this a couple times. They do it in the very first shot of the film. They do, like, this, like, literally you're just looking at people's scalps. Mm-hmm. And they also do it, I thought, notably, when they discover the dead body and when they're, like, inspecting the dead body.
Oh, like a bird's eye view type of thing? Like, looking down at it? Yeah.
And on the one hand, I can understand cinematically that it's a train and it's a confined space and it takes a lot of equipment and lighting and everything to get the shots you want. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, like, film is all about, like, eye lines and expressions and all of those things, and you just, like, can't see any expressions when you do that. Like, you're literally just looking at their scalps, which kind of, like, made the, like, discovery of the dead body very, like, detached, I felt like, emotionally, which might have been on purpose, but I also felt like it would have been a really good opportunity to, like, see the reactions of, like, the doctor when he saw the dead body, and, like, Book when he saw the dead body, and it's like, you know, like,
that's interesting, because you were thinking of it from a visual perspective. I too was focusing on their reactions, but more from, like, a listening perspective of, like, what are the words that they're saying, what is the tone of their voice, because, like, the first time through, maybe as a viewer you wouldn't know that it would be important to pay attention to how they react, because you're thinking, okay, maybe one person is at fault here, so, like, the rest of them are going to be kind of just confused or, like, pretty detached from what has happened. But the second time through, you know they're all guilty, so it's almost like, I really want to pay attention to how people are reacting right now, because it's going to clue us in as to how well they're covering their tracks, because it's almost like they had to underreact, but they also had to react appropriately for someone who is finding out shocking news that there's been a death on board. So it's, like, a very interesting balance. Like, some of them didn't really react at all. Some of them seemed kind of startled or confused, but not too over the top. It was a very, like, tapered response on the whole. Like, no one was freaking out. There was the one lady, the grandma, who kind of tried to pin it on someone else right away and be like, there was a man in my cabin, so it wasn't me. But no one else really had that visceral of a response to finding out, like, there's a murderer on board.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because, like, you would think there would be more paranoia among the group as well, which there really wasn't much. Besides, there was one scene where, like, the Duchess says, I'm not sleeping in my cabin tonight, I'm going to sleep out where the group is.
Mary.
Mary, yeah. But other than that, no one was really that verbal about, like, I'm scared to be in the presence of a murderer. Because they all knew.
Which was kind of telling, I think.
Yeah. So.
Also interesting, in the book, the doctor was not involved. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure. But in the movie, they merged him with, there was an English colonel in the book, and then the doctor. And they were two different people.
Huh.
So the colonel was in love with Mary, but the doctor was just a doctor on board. He wasn't involved. So I thought that was kind of an interesting that they tied those two together. Mm-hmm. There's also it was kind of interesting, they go a lot into, like, stereotypes.
For the characters, you mean?
Yeah, I feel like in this story, like, there's the whole, when Hartman is ranting about, like, keeping the races separate to Mary, and she, like, mixes the wines.
Right.
And there's a lot of, like, people pointing fingers at people, like, oh, the Italians are more likely to be murderers, you know, like, which they also do in the book. I thought it was interesting how they kind of Americanized it, because as far as I know, the doctor and the colonel in the books were not black. The colonel was just English. Mm-hmm. I don't know about the doctor, but it was interesting how they kind of, like, put a black man in there so that, like, the American audience could be like, oh yeah, that's stereotyping, you know? Whereas in the books, it was more subtle. It was very, like, Italians are more likely to use a knife, and, you know, the English are so stuck up. And, you know, like, things that, like, an American audience might not pick up on as well as, like, a European audience.
Right. And we also have to take into account the time period, and, like this was right around Prohibition era, so, like, the different mentalities on race that would have been at play, maybe, like, we would have to put ourselves in that historical perspective to make sense of it.
So.
Yeah. But,
Can we talk about the grandmother?
Yeah.
So, she's, like, portraying this, like, lady named Mrs. Hubbard, which isn't, like, of course, they don't really reveal, no, I guess her real name isn't Hubbard, because it's, like, Goldenbaum, or what, Goldenberg, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But it's, like, her last role.
Yeah.
And the first time I watched this, right after I finished listening to the audiobook, when they introduced Mrs. Hubbard, I was like, that is not what Mrs. Hubbard looks like.
Oh, it was a very different description?
I feel like they, like, portray Mrs. Hubbard in the movie as kind of, like, young and sexy, for lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. And in the movie, that's, like, in the book, that is not the persona I got at all. She's very much so, like, old mother who, like, is always gossiping type thing. Okay. And, like, like, in the book, the person who does the audiobook is terrific. And he, like, does this voice for Mrs. Hubbard that is so, like, on point, where she's constantly, like, wait until my daughter hears about this. I'll have to tell my daughter, like, constantly talking about this daughter. And
the
Poirot,
daughter's dead. Is that what
in real life?
Right.
But, like, it's all an act. Like, she's this, like, older lady who's, like, always talking about her daughter and showing pictures of grandkids and things like that.
Well, that's really interesting.
Like,
because it's
annoyingly
like,
so.
huh.
To the point that, like, at one point, Poirot, like, in his internal monologue is, like, to these probably, like, very normal children that she's talking about. Like, that they're, like, superstars, basically, you know? Like,
Right.
you know, like a grandmothery type that, like, is talking up her children all the time.
Right.
In a very annoying way. Which is not the vibe I got from her in the movie. She's very, like, flirting with Ratchet and then sort of flirting with Poirot. And I'm like, you're like a grandmother?
Right. There was a line about she's been accused of husband hunting and everything. Yeah. I'm not sure why that was the atmosphere that they chose to give to her character. Yeah, I think.
Plus, I don't think she had a wig or anything in the book. So, like, I was like, how is she a grandmother?
Right.
'Cause she didn't look that old to me.
In the movie, you mean?
Yeah, at least at first.
mean,
Until she pulled off the wig, and then I was
was-
kind of like, okay. Maybe I'm just terrible at judging age.
She
but...
looked somewhat old to me. Like, I don't know. Because I know when she was flirting with Johnny Depp's character, I was like, whoa, like, there's a gap here. What are you doing? I don't know. That, like, but, maybe it was a way to kind of, like, really get into a different character for her, in the movie, or,
I guess they just wanted to exaggerate it.
yeah.
But it felt like a weird path to take for me.
Yeah. I don't know.
I also feel like we have to talk about, what is her name? I think she's Swedish. The one who is, like, against alcohol, the nurse.
Yes, let's talk about her. Oh my gosh.
She was weird
Is it
because
Greta?
she's...
Is that her name?
I think in the book her last name is Olsen.
Okay.
But I don't know the first name. But she's Swedish.
Okay, yeah.
At least in the book. And I don't remember... Granted, I think I fell asleep during the chapter where he questioned her when I was listening to the audiobook, because that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But in the book, I just remember her being, like, this very quiet, timid lady that he just, like, basically writes off. Like, there's no way she killed someone. But she's very odd in the movie.
Yeah. In the movie, there's a lot of, like, dark religious allusions that she's making about hell, about sin and condemnation and falling into, she makes kind of like this jaded reference to a period of indulgence in her past life and how she kind of owes it to God to right that wrong. And it was interesting because Poirot notices that her hands are all calloused, and she's talking about God, and kind of like God's law, but then Poirot asks her, like, you know, I see that your hands are calloused, and she says something about being, like, trained as a fighter or something, and he's like, so you don't trust your God to protect you. And she's like, well, just in case he's busy. And Poirot says he's always busy. So, like, he's kind of... I took that to mean kind of like he was questioning some of her maybe religious... like, I don't know if it was, like, the religious standards that she... possesses, or like just her idea or like concept of God. He was questioning that for a moment.
Plus we see her totally deck someone at the beginning. I don't know if you caught that when they try to I think it was someone trying to steal her luggage or something, and she just like pow.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So she was very interesting because she's kind of like, she's the character who's always reminding everyone of sin. But yet she herself has fallen into sin. Her grave, the thing that was eating at her was that, I guess maybe she was a drinker. Like she had had too much alcohol the night that that Daisy was murdered, and so
kidnapped.
Or kidnapped, right? And Poirot uses a euphemism saying like one drink too many or something, but basically it's like she didn't have her wits about her, and she blames herself for Daisy being kidnapped on her watch. And so there's something significant to that, and the stringent, like, religious, almost like overly, like, hyper-moral stance that she now holds about, like, drinking alcohol at all is sinful, and she kind of, the pendulum kind of swings the entirely other way for her. But then at the same time, she is an accomplice in a murder. So I'm not quite sure how she rectifies that in her mind of like, such and such, XYZ is sin, but this is justice. It's an odd set of rules.
I think when she talks to Poirot, it's kind of like, I say foreshadowing, but she already did the crime.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing to the reveal that I think her justification is that, like, oh, God was too busy to take care of this. So we're taking care of it.
She did say something like, my conscience died with Daisy, or something like that. Like, so, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I found that to be very interesting because I know, like, kind of going back to the question about justice, like, and this is just my own personal opinion and standpoint, so other people don't have to hold this, but what God says about morality is the standard that I try to follow for my life. So, like, the same goes for justice. And I think each of these people, there was, like, this conflicting stance about, like, God's law or the law of people or the concept of justice based upon people who have been wounded. And when there is no, like, outstanding standard that you're following, it's kind of like your own pain can dictate your idea of justice. And, like, I don't know. It's kind of like anything goes at that point because these people were hurt enough to think that that justice was served, I guess. I don't know. What do you think about that? Like,
yeah. I don't know. I think this character, whatever her name is, the Swedish nurse, is kind of like, kind of goes into, like, the stereotype that some people have of, like, Christians, where it's like, oh, you're all gonna go to hell for overindulging, and, like, only us Christians know what's right. Which I think is a stereotype, and I don't think it's the way Christians should be.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that's there. And I think it's something you have to kind of keep in mind is that, like, okay, like, you're still, if you're a Christian, you're saying that what God says is correct, not, oh, now I'm a Christian, I'm a good person, now what I say is correct.
Right.
So
the problem starts with us. Like, that's why we need God to...
Yeah.
Because, like, we get in our own way and mess things up. Yeah. Yeah, the minute that you start putting yourself into the equation, I don't think anyone who's doing that is acting as an actual Christian. If they're using, like, if they're, like, trying to make themselves God.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. I don't know.
Okay, switching to a lighter tone. How about the
I keep bringing us back to, like, these morally, like, grappling with the theme of what's right and wrong, and you're like, on a lighter note, let's switch away from this.
To be fair, before we started this podcast, Emily was like, am I allowed to, like, question morality in this podcast? And I was like, I guess we can't really talk about it without getting a little philosophical. But half an hour later, Emily goes on about morality for 10 minutes straight.
It's like, she gave me the green light, I will run with it.
Okay, but anyway, speaking about violent characters, the Count. Can't we talk about the Count?
The Count.
Which was the sister's husband.
Oh, yeah. He was an interesting
I think
guy.
he was nutso.
I think he was nutso.
I think maybe, I mean, I guess if he's like a count, I don't know, is a count like royal, sort of? Are they related to the royal family?
It would be a form of nobility, a count.
Yes.
But I don't know that it would be royalty.
Okay, but think it's
hereditary? So it can be married into as well.
Okay.
I know if I'm thinking about, like, Jane Austen novels and stuff.
Of course that would be your basis, like, the English major.
Like, you want to marry to up your social status. So, like, I don't remember exactly what the hierarchy is, but, like, duchess or duke to count or countess, like, there's some freedom where people would try to strategically marry up. So I don't think it's technically royalty, but it's social class. Like, it's a social hierarchy.
So, like, in the movie, the sister to Sonia marries the Count, which was probably a step up for her.
Okay.
But, like, if they had a kid, that kid would still be in line for the countship, whatever you call it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. I think he would still possess, like, the same title.
I mean, he could still marry up, probably.
His dad. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Because, like, I'm wondering if there's inbreeding going on here, because this guy is, like, nuts.
I have no idea. I don't know.
Plus, he was, like, I don't know if you know it. I don't know if it was in my imagination. I felt like he was, like, slightly cross-eyed or something. Like, there was something weird going on.
Yeah. He was definitely, like, a loose cannon. Like,
yeah.
Very violent.
The whole scene with the cameraman at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It was so funny. Then the guy drops the camera after taking the picture.
I really laughed at that part, because why would you even take a picture at that moment? And then he just smashes the camera, like, knowing there's no way I'm getting away with this.
Do you think that the Count is always such a loose cannon, or do you think he was, like, worked up about what they were about to do and was, like with the photography, do you think that was just trying to, like, cover his tracks, like, have as little evidence of his movements as possible? And then, like, with Poirot, like, he's trying to, like, get Poirot off their case, so he's being violent. Or do you think he's just honest to goodness that violent? All the time.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think maybe his wife, what's her name?
Helena, I think.
Helena, something with an H, was a very fragile person. That's kind of the concept that I got from her, because her sister was the mother of Daisy, who was murdered. So, I mean, she's watched her niece, watched in a metaphorical sense. I'm sure she probably didn't see it physically, but, like, she's experienced her niece being murdered, her sister dying amidst childbirth, and her brother-in-law committing suicide. So she's a very broken person, and she's afraid of everything, and that's why she takes so much Barbasol, right?
I don't know what the name of the drug was. I'm not sure.
Okay, I think I'm saying it right.
Some sort of drug.
To kind of calm her nerves and help her just exist without being petrified all the time. So maybe she intentionally sought out an aggressive husband to kind of be her protector or something, because she's not really afraid of him, but he's a pretty scary person. So it seems like maybe he's, like, gentle and comforting with her, but very aggressive with everyone else. I don't know.
I think that was, again, another situation where the movie definitely, like, cranked him up a couple of notches.
Yeah.
Like, I think in the book, it was the same thing where they had diplomatic immunity at first, and then Poirot kind of said, no, this is a murder case. And he insisted on talking to the Count, and the Count was okay with that, but did not want him to talk to the Countess. Mm-hmm. And I think he got, like, I think he started slamming stuff or something like that when, like, he insisted on speaking to the Countess. And then the Countess just ended up being, like, a very gentle, quiet lady who, you know, I think she is on drugs in the book, too.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite as unstable in the book.
Yeah.
But.
So, kind of switching gears a little bit, what did you think of the setting of the play? Like, I know we talked a little bit about camera angles.
Like the train?
The setting of, like, the train in the middle of winter, like, limited space. I just thought that was a very interesting place for this story to take, like, to take place.
I think I read this book for the first time in high school. Mm-hmm. And I think it was for summer reading at the library. They had, like, a bingo sheet of, like, different, like, genres and, like, little challenge, like, read a book with an author that has the same name as you, first name as you, or something like that. Or, like, read a mystery, you know, whatever. And I needed to read a mystery for, like, the one spot. And my dad was like, oh, Agatha Christie is always good. So then I went over and I'm like, okay, Murder on the Orient Express is a classic, and also it's on a train, and I like trains. and that's why I picked it up.
Yes. Yeah.
And I ended up liking it, even though I didn't go back and read any more. But
Yeah.
I just like trains.
That's fair.
That doesn't really answer your question.
It all comes down to, I just like trains. Yeah. No,
If I had the chance to, like, go on a trip on a train, I'd be all for it.
That would be fun. That would be very fun.
I feel like it's not as much of a thing anymore.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I don't know. Very interesting setting. Interesting that the train is stopped on a bridge. I don't know. That seems a little symbolic to me for some reason, but I can't quite figure out why.
I don't think it's, like, exactly a bridge. I think it's, like, the side of a mountain. Mm-hmm. And it's, like, too steep, so they kind of, like, build up, like, scaffolding.
Reinforcements to keep from falling.
Also, for, like, an older guy who's going gray, Poirot, like, does some gymnastics following whatever
I wonder if
his
that
name.
was a stunt double. Probably, right?
Probably, but it was kind of like, is that believable?
Yeah. He does. Mm-hmm.
Especially since, like, even though he's not really portrayed as that in the movie, despite the fact that he's always eating cake, I always picture him as, like, this short, round guy. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he would be able to do that, all the stunts going down the scaffolding.
Yeah, his age alone, like, there would have been some kind of cramping or something going on.
He was fast, too. Like, he caught up to, what is his name, McQueen?
McQueen, yeah.
Lightning McQueen.
Okay, what else do we have?
We didn't answer your question.
Oh,
setting.
The role of setting, yeah.
I mean, I think the fact that it's winter kind of, like, symbolizes the cold of the action of murder.
Yeah.
And how these, like, normally very warm individuals are kind of, like, showing their cold side.
Turned cold, yeah.
Turned cold by the tragedy.
By their grief, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
As far as the train, I think it was just kind of what we talked about before, like the irony of it's supposed to be all these strangers confined in a small space from all walks of life, and it turns out that they're not strangers. They very much know each other, and they're not thrown together randomly at all. It's all a plot.
Yeah. I think I wanted to talk about a bit of use of symbolism. So, first of all, the fact that it was a stab wound, or 12, I've heard that, like, the act of stabbing and using a knife is a choice that is usually correlated with a more personal or intimate way to kill, which sounds odd.
Did you get that from me? I think we talked
you
about
tell me
that
this?
we talked about it in the last podcast.
Okay, maybe this is where I've heard it. Maybe it was Elizabeth. But I thought that was fitting because, like, they all have something very personal and wounding linked to their motive. So, yeah, that made sense to me. And then the fact that the grandma, Mrs. Hubbard, she allows the doctor to stab her in a place where she knows she's not going to die. But what was the point of that? Was it just to throw Poirot off their trail? Or
I think because all of them are working together to try and make sure that Poirot doesn't convict any of them.
Right.
So I think the entire train realized that Poirot was just about to accuse McQueen. So I think that was their way of saying, no, McQueen could not be held responsible because whoever it is stabbed her
Right.
when you were questioning McQueen.
I feel like they could have chose something a bit less drastic than...
Plus they needed to get rid of the murder weapon.
They needed to get rid of it?
Yeah, because if it would have been found anywhere, it would have convicted any of them. But once it was wiped clean and stabbed into Mrs. Hubbard, then it's...
Okay, that makes sense. But I thought it was interesting that she was stabbed in the back. Because, I don't know, like that phrase is kind of correlated with a sort of betrayal. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic considering it was done not as a betrayal, but as like
a way to help
Yeah.
someone. Yeah. Okay, so there was that. Then there was the grains of sand. So Poirot was having kind of this face-off with the doctor, who intervenes right as Poirot has kind of singled out Mary and is convicting her of having planned this whole thing. The doctor, what is his name? I forget.
I don't know either.
I forget. But he comes kind of out of nowhere and he has a gun and he's like, you can't say Mary did it because I did it. And he shoots his gun and it just barely like scrapes by Poirot and then it hits this bag of grain or something. And that was kind of interesting because like you're seeing it like empty of all of these grains of whatever it is, feed or sand or whatever, and it's like that moment was kind of right before the climax of the movie, like right before he takes everyone and faces them all and solves it. And that kind of made me think of like this is the height of the rising action, like this is where like time is running out before he's going to solve the crime. So I don't know, I just thought that was interesting with like the fallen sand.
By the way, the doctor shooting Poirot, pretty sure that didn't happen in the book. So that was like something they used to escalate the tension in the movie.
Okay.
Also, the end, which I also kind of liked, where Poirot is like, I can't testify, I can't lie about who did it, so here, I won't stop you, you can kill me. That doesn't happen in the book either.
In the book? Wow,
in the book, he's basically like, okay, there's two options, and he gives like the first option where like the short, like, random guy who's not on the carriage anymore came through, killed Ratchet, and escaped out the window into the snowstorm. And Book has the same reaction where he's like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't connect the dots. And then Poirot gives the other reason, and, like, everyone's kind of like, oh, dang. And he's like, personally, I prefer the first option. Don't you? And Book is kind of like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Maybe in the movie they did that to drive home the perspective of none of them are killers, quote unquote, because, like, he's giving them the option to save themselves, and all they have to do is kill him. And no one can do it. The grandma actually would have rather kill herself. Like, she almost points the gun to her head, right? Saying...
I think she picks up the gun to shoot Poirot, and then I think...
Then she puts it to herself, though, for a second. Because she says something about, I died with Daisy. So, yeah, I guess maybe that...
I did find... Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. I did find it odd that he was like, yeah, shoot me, because I'm not going to be able to lie for your sake. Mm-hmm. But then he full on just leaves and, like, doesn't say anything about it. So, like, I don't know if they just convinced him with the, like, maybe the fact that they didn't shoot him just, like, solidified in his brain, like, these people aren't killers.
These are good people, yeah.
So maybe that changed his mind. Mm-hmm. But I still thought it was odd. Like, they didn't really explain it.
Yeah.
He just, like, a couple minutes later is just strolling off the train.
I'm not sure quite what changed his mind about being able to give the police a false story. Yeah. I don't know. I do think, like, probably him posing that option to them and them not taking it kind of builds up the, like, ethos of these people. Like, the fact that you want to empathize with them and say, like, okay, none of them were willing to kill him. And it's not only that none of them kill him, but some of them just, like, break down emotionally at that point. And you really see, like, the grandmother for sure. Greta starts crying too, and you can see that she's blaming herself for Daisy's death. So you really see them as people, kind of, for the first time in that scene, who are just, like, very shattered by this tragedy. But yeah,
I think the movie, probably because they knew they were going to try and go on and make more Poirot movies, they did a lot to try and, like, establish his character and have a little bit of an arc for him specifically.
Right.
That, like, isn't so much in the book. In the book, he's very static through this. Just doing the Poirot thing.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing that I don't remember being touched on in this book, it might be touched on in other Poirot books, is the whole lost love situation.
Catherine, right?
Yes.
Of Poirot. There was someone once.
And to be honest, her inclusion didn't make any sense to me in the movie. Except that it gave Poirot a reason to, like, monologue in a room by himself so that we could tell what he was thinking.
Yes. Slight spoiler. His love life is touched upon even more in Death on the Nile.
Okay, so they're setting it up for a future.
They might have been setting it up, yeah.
Okay.
Like a slight, like, oh, hey, and there's this, but, like, we'll come back to it later on.
Okay. Then I'm not so upset about it.
Yeah, there's a lot in Death on the Nile about love, passion, lust. Yeah, it's a major theme. So maybe he has to have something hinted at about lost love to be able to be more of a key player in a story like that.
So it's not coming out of the blue in the second movie.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because it didn't seem to tie into this movie at all. Mm-hmm. There is one scene where I kind of enjoyed the cinematography, where he's sitting in his compartment, I think is the right word, on his bed. and the, like, window is next to him, and he's, like, his face is reflected in the window.
Yeah.
As he's talking to Catherine, explaining his thoughts and, like, his, like, indecisiveness about this.
Yeah.
Like, right before he kind of figures it out. So it's kind of, like, symbolic of, like, oh, he's, like, seeing himself in a different light type thing.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Maybe through talking to Catherine, this photo of Catherine, I don't know.
Yeah. And the photo of Catherine, the glass shattered when the train, like when the avalanche came, which was sad. That was a hard scene, like, because he was sad about that. But, yeah, I don't know. I wonder if that was kind of reflective of, like, his own brokenness. Like, he's noticing the brokenness in all of these other people who are key players in this crime, but, like, he has his own tragedy that kind of, like, shattered him too. But yeah,
He does have a great laugh, though.
yeah, oh my gosh, I loved that when he was, like, reading a book to himself. I was wondering, like, does he read mystery novels? Like,
Well, he said he was reading Dickens.
oh,
and
Dickens, okay.
Dickens isn't a murder mystery, is it? Isn't
Well,
a mystery?
Dickens wrote, like, A Christmas Carol, like...
To me, that's not a mystery.
Yeah. So I don't think, maybe he's not reading mysteries. It would make sense.
Also,
maybe,
I don't know what you're reading of Dickens that makes you laugh.
Yeah, huh.
There's a lot of
There's
sad
some
orphan
satire.
stories.
There's, like, commentary on society that's a little bit snarky.
Okay.
I don't know. But, yeah.
He's an odd man, I guess. Maybe he has a weird sense of humor.
Yeah. Yeah, but that would make sense if he wasn't reading a mystery, because he kind of wanted a weekend off. Like, he just wanted to go on this train and have some time not solving mysteries.
I love the line where Book is like, you sit down, you eat your cake, and you think and solve the mystery. And he's like, that's not how it works.
You think that's all I do? Seriously? Yeah.
Not completely wrong, though. He did sit down, he did eat cake with Ratchet, and then he did, think it through and solve the mystery. It's a simplification, but it's there.
Oh, man. Well,
any last thoughts?
Oh, I think we ended the last time with just blatantly, like, what was our opinion of the movie and would we recommend it to other people?
Oh, wait, before we do that, I had one more symbolism thing that I really liked. I noticed the second time I watched this.
Okay.
When Poirot comes clean to Hartman that he figured out that, like, he's not Austrian, he's not a professor. Mm-hmm. And Hartman is coming clean about, oh yeah, I'm not actually, I'm like this, like, what did he say? He was like a police officer or a detective or something like that.
Something.
So basically he's, like, revealing, like, a second identity. Mm-hmm. And they do this weird shot where they, like, pan over and you see, like, the back of Poirot's head and you're seeing Hartman through this weird mirror that's showing, like, 3 reflections of his face. And it's cool because, like, okay, he had the identity as, like, the professor.
Right.
Which was one identity. And then he had the second identity as, like, oh yeah, I'm just, like, this detective. But in reality, there's a third identity.
He's also a policeman.
He's also, connected with the maid and, like, that whole backstory that Poirot hasn't put together yet. Which I thought was cool.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's like a kind of a play on the concept of being, like, two-faced, except it's, like, 3 identities, and hence the 3 mirrors, I guess. Like,
which I also kind of loved, because I know you're not a Marvel fan, but the actor is William Dafoe, who plays the Green Goblin in the Spider-Man movies.
Oh, interesting.
Who is very two-faced, because he is, on one hand, like, Peter Parker's best friend's dad, who is basically adopting Peter into the family, basically. Loves Peter. And then he's also the Green Goblin persona who is, like, trying to kill Spider-Man all at the same time. So
Interesting.
I
So
thought that-
maybe he gets typecasted as just a two-faced character. Maybe he's really good at pulling that off.
yeah.
Michelle Pfeiffer, I think that's how you say her last name, who played Mrs. Hubbard, often gets typecasted as kind of a flirtatious character. I mean, she was in Hairspray, and she's very, like, that's kind of her character, too. So, I don't know, maybe that happens a lot, where, like, someone does a certain type of role, and people see that they're good at it, and then they, like, kind of end up having that a lot.
Or
I don't know.
like maybe it's a little Easter egg for the audience type
Yeah,
thing. Like, oh
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll give you a little hint.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's other characters in this that, like, granted, I'm sure these actors have so many other roles that I'm not aware of, but, like, we were talking about before the movie started that Poirot is played by Kenneth Branagh, who also plays Gilderoy Lockhart in the Harry Potter films,
Oh, right.
who is basically a bumbling idiot.
No.
Which is so different from
his
Poirot.
character. Yeah, so I guess it doesn't always apply.
So the first time I watched this, I had a hard time getting over that, even though, like, it's a very different, like, makeup. Like, I think he's significantly younger, basically, when he made that Harry Potter movie. And he's, like, very, like, golden locks type thing, like, very blonde. Whereas here, he's, like, going kind of gray. And
Now
But
I want to see a picture of that character, because I
I'm gonna
can't
bring
really
this
place
up.
it. I mean, I've only seen, like, 2, maybe 3 Harry Potter movies, so...
And he's always wearing, like, these luscious robes. Same
This
actor.
This is the same actor as... Wait, what was his name in this movie?
Lockhart. Gilderoy Lockhart.
No, I mean in...
Poirot. Or Kenneth Branagh.
Oh my gosh. That's so
But the one that
trippy.
was really throwing me off is this actor also plays...
Wow.
If you've seen the adaptation of... Oh my goodness, I'm blanking. The Shakespeare play, the good one. Hamlet.
I
don't know if you've seen it, but
no, I haven't seen it.
there's an adaptation of Hamlet that
The
is
good
very
one.
good. It's my favorite Shakespearean play. But we watched it in AP English because it, like, actually followed the play. And Kenneth Branagh plays Hamlet, the main character.
Okay.
So in my brain, I was having trouble separating Hamlet from Poirot when I was watching this movie.
Yeah.
I think it's something about the piercing blue eyes in the characters.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to get into, no, this is Poirot in my
Wow.
brain.
Yeah. Man, that
But
would
the
be
guy has a
difficult.
range.
Yeah.
Go from Shakespeare to Harry Potter to,
Detective.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also, the actor that plays McQueen is the same actor that voices Olaf. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that, but I think he's also in the live action Beauty and the Beast,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I
He plays LeFou.
yeah. Yeah.
So he's got a range, too.
Yeah, he does. So, yeah.
And he can run fast.
He can run fast. Yes.
But lots of big names in this movie, definitely, as far as actors go.
Yeah. I thought all the actors did a very good job.
I was trying to figure out what I knew the actor who plays Book from. Because I definitely recognized him. But I could not place
Yeah,
him.
we'll have to look up what other movies he's been in, because he did look familiar. I feel like in another movie, though, he was like an untrustworthy character for some reason. I don't know. I could be wrong. But,
Well, you guys, if you're listening in the comments, you can tell us.
yeah, if you know what we're thinking of, or what we think we're thinking of, maybe you could give us a tip-off. Yeah. But,
They're probably yelling at us in the screen right now. Like,
yeah, maybe.
you don't know he's from? Sorry, we don't know things.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, we should wrap this up. But, okay, would you recommend this movie to other people?
Yes, I would also recommend you watch it twice. Because I don't think you get the full... I think if you watch it first time through, you're kind of like having trouble keeping up, I think.
Right.
Because a lot of stuff happens really fast. Especially when they kind of do the, like, interrogation things where they're, like, cutting back and forth between characters.
Yeah, it is a lot.
Because there are a lot of characters to keep track of.
Yeah, I was the one saying, like, can we pause this for a second and just clarify what just happened? So
They also introduce, like, at the beginning, they kind of, as, like, they're getting ready to board the train, they very quickly introduce all of the characters before you know they're relevant.
Right, yeah. You just get kind of a snapshot of them, like, moving about in the crowd, and their behavior, even in that, is kind of indicative of, like, hey, this is important to notice how this person acts, but, yeah.
So watch it twice.
Yeah,
At least. I think it gets better with each watch.
Yeah. The first run-through is definitely just, like, getting down the comprehension of what's happening.
Because you don't want to spoil the ending for yourself the first time through, because it is a good ending.
Yeah.
But then you want to, but then you can't.
Podcast though.
Yeah.
You kind of already know.
Yeah, I would hope. But I think it's one of those things that, like, is much more enjoyable once you know the ending, and then you can appreciate how they got there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think they masterfully kind of pull off, like, there's a lot of, like, mysteries where you can kind of figure out who did it just by, like, the story structure. But they do a very good job of, like, hinting at it so that once you know the solution, you know who did it. But I don't think you could guess it before.
Yeah. I definitely didn't guess it the first time through. I had theories, but yeah, I definitely did not see this coming.
Do you have a ranking out of 10?
Oh.
Or 100? Man. I don't remember which we did last time.
For, like, all-time favorite movies, or, like, of the mysteries that I've seen, how would I rank it?
Is it better than Knives Out? How about start with that?
I did like this better than Knives Out, I think, just because it does follow more of that traditional structure of a mystery where you really don't have all of the details until the very end. And there's a big reveal, which I liked better. There was definitely a reveal at the end of Knives Out, but you also have a lot more of the background information throughout than some of the characters do, which I appreciated that inversion of structure, but I like this way better in Murder on the Orient Express.
I would say I like Knives Out better, but it's close.
It's a close call.
Yeah, I think I like Knives Out just because it's not the traditional story structure. I think it's more inventive, kind of a like twist on the classic format, which I like. Plus, I think it's slightly more funny. This one had its moments, but Knives Out is kind of hilarious at times.
Yeah, this was more of a, like, kind of witty type of humor that was very, like, it was few and far between, and mostly it was serious. And Knives Out was more like there were just outwardly comedic moments, like, dispersed throughout to make it a lighter feel.
I felt like this one was a little bit more of, like, highbrow intellectual. Like, not entirely that, like, no, like, not everyone would enjoy it, but more so than Knives Out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think I would agree. But I would definitely say if you watched this and you liked it, look into watching Death on the Nile, because it is similar, like the same actor playing Poirot, but it's a very good follow-up to Murder on the Orient Express, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very good good film. So yeah, if you liked this, there is more.
I think we're gonna try and review Death on the Nile at some
point. Hope so.
I want to, so stay tuned for that. Once that comes out, I don't know if it's out on DVD yet or not, but
we'll see.
Do you have a thought on what you would like to review next?
Oh wow. I'm not sure.
I think Laura requested Clue next,
Okay,
if you're down for that.
sure.
So
Do
if you're
Clue.
interested in hearing us review Clue, the movie, not the board game, we will be doing that next, which will be interesting because that's kind of like the traditional inspiration for Knives Out, I think.
Yes.
There's definitely some Clue vibes, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
But be sure to give us your thoughts on the movie in the comments.
Yes.
If you have any suggestions of movies you want us to review, also in the comments.
We are definitely open to that. And please subscribe to our Depth of Film podcast, whatever medium you may be listening to it on.
But until next time, see ya.
See ya, and thanks for listening.